From killers hiding borrowed faces to villains who are standing right next to you the whole time, here are the 10 horror movie unmaskings that genuinely broke audiences and left them staring at the credits in complete disbelief. 10 Happy Death Day to You, the Other Ryan. Happy Death Day 2, You takes everything that made the first film work. The time loop, the babyface killer, the mounting dread of reliving the same nightmare, and then immediately hands the entire curse off to Ryan, Carter's nerdy, excitable roommate, like some kind of sadistic baton pass. Ryan wakes up, goes through his morning, makes it to the lab, and gets murdered by someone in that familiar baby-faced university mascot mask. Then he wakes up again, at the exact same moment, and the loop is suddenly his, which is already a wild enough premise to carry a movie on its own. But the real gut punch comes when they finally corner the killer and rip the mask off. And underneath it, not a stranger, not a copycat, but a literal alternate dimension version of himself who crossed timelines trying to fix mistakes in his own universe and ended up hunting himself in the process. It's one of the more genuinely creative villain reveals in the franchise because it reframes the entire threat in one moment. This isn't pure evil chasing you down, it's desperation wearing a disguise, and somehow that makes it stranger and more unsettling than any traditional monster ever could. 9. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Ben Willis, The Fisherman. If the 90s taught teenagers anything through cinema, it's that driving home after a party is essentially signing a contract with death. 4 friends hit a man with their car one night, panic in the worst possible way, dump the body, swear themselves to silence, and spend the next year trying to convince themselves it never happened. Then an anonymous letter arrives. No name, no return address, just one sentence. And the killing starts. The fisherman comes for them one by one, soaked coat and a hook for a hand, completely silent except for the sound of metal cutting through the air. What makes Ben Willis's reveal land so hard is that he isn't supernatural, isn't deformed, and isn't mysterious in any Hollywood way. He's a father, a man who lost his daughter, who was already running from his own crime that night, who got hit by that car and buried while he was still breathing. When his face finally appears in that boat surrounded by fog, the horror shifts completely, because you're not looking at a monster, you're looking at a man made entirely of grief and rage and a twisted logic that almost makes sense if you squint. The movie tells you right there in the title that guilt doesn't go away, it just waits. 8. Sorority Row, Andy the Boyfriend. Sorority Row follows the horror playbook almost to the letter. Guilty secret, group of friends slowly picked off, mysterious masked killer with an improvised blade weapon turning campus into a hunting ground. And for most of its runtime, it's exactly the movie you expect it to be. The formula works because the audience is always scanning the frame, looking for the killer, doing the mental math, trying to figure out which suspicious side character has been hiding in plain sight the whole time. And then the mask comes off and it's Andy, the boyfriend, the calm, steady, completely reasonable guy who spent the entire film being the one person you actually trusted. Protective, devoted, the emotional anchor in a story full of chaos. His logic is completely unhinged. He needed to eliminate everyone who knew the secret so he and his girlfriend could have a clean future together, free from the weight of what happened. There's almost a romantic coldness to how he delivers it, like he genuinely believes he was doing something loving. And that specific kind of obsession, the kind that wraps murder in the language of devotion, is so much more disturbing than a stranger in a mask ever could be. 7. Smiley the Internet Did It. Smiley isn't a great film by most measures, but its central concept is genuinely one of the most unsettling ideas in modern horror, and it deserves credit for that alone. The setup is an urban legend spreading through online chat rooms. Type "I did it for the lulz" 3 times during a conversation and a stitched smile masked color named Smiley appears behind your screen partner and murders them instantly. When real deaths start following that exact pattern, the line between internet myth and actual danger starts dissolving in ways that feel uncomfortably familiar. The final reveal doesn't give you one killer or even a small group. It gives you an entire network. Friends, classmates, the guy Ashley had been falling for, all part of a loosely organized collective that engineered Smiley as a mass hysteria experiment, essentially asking whether belief alone could manufacture a real boogeyman. They didn't do it for revenge, or money, or any motive horror usually hands you. They did it for the chaos, for the internet's entertainment, for the LOLs, literally. And just when that lands, the film cuts to a new Smiley emerging from the darkness, unknown, unaffiliated, maybe real this time, and simply rolls the credits without answering a single question it just raised. 6. Hush, the most terrifying normal face in horror. Hush does something genuinely bold with its masked killer. It removes the mask voluntarily halfway through the film while the threat is still very much active. Maddie, a deaf writer living alone in the woods, spends the first act being stalked by a cold, expressionless, plaster white figure outside her house. Standard enough premise. But when she writes on the glass trying to communicate, his response is to reach up and pull the mask off himself, completely unprompted, while holding eye contact the entire time. What's underneath is the most disturbing possible thing. Just a face. No scars, no deformity, nothing hidden. Just an ordinary man wearing a slight comfortable smile. The mask was never concealing anything monstrous. It was a prop, a game piece, and he's letting her know the game was never really about the mask at all. From that point, the film completely shifts, because without it, he becomes more unpredictable, more present, more human in all the wrong ways. That specific kind of normality, the sheer absence of anything to explain him, is more frightening than any grotesque makeup the genre has ever put on screen, and it's in that arrogant certainty that he's already won where Maddie eventually finds her opening. 5. Halloween 5, Michael Myers takes off the mask. Halloween 5 is nobody's favorite entry in the franchise, but what it does with Michael Myers in its final act is something no other film in the series has dared to do before or since, and it deserves far more conversation than it gets. Michael Myers is supposed to be the definitive blank slate of horror. No motive you can rationalize, no humanity left to reach, just shapeless evil wearing a borrowed face. That's the entire mythology, and 4 films had spent considerable effort reinforcing it. So when young Jamie, cornered and desperate, whispers the word uncle, and Michael stops, the franchise mythology cracks in real time. He reaches up slowly and removes the mask himself, and underneath it is just a face. Human, tired, almost confused, like evil briefly remembered it used to be something else entirely. The moment lasts only seconds before he puts it back on, almost ashamed of having shown anything, and immediately goes back to trying to kill her. But those few seconds raise the question the whole franchise quietly dreads. What if there's still something in there, just too buried and too broken to matter anymore? It's an uncomfortable idea, and the film deserves credit for being willing to ask it even if it didn't want to answer. 4. Leatherface, the mask behind the mask. Most masked killers are hiding something specific, an identity, a motive, a secret that the unmasking is designed to expose. Leatherface is hiding himself, and that single distinction is what makes him the most genuinely tragic figure in the genre's entire history of disguised villains. In the 2003 remake, we get a brief, devastating glimpse of what Thomas Hewitt actually looks like underneath the human skin mask. A disfigured, sunken-eyed face that he has been covering for his entire life. He doesn't wear the mask to be terrifying or to conceal a crime. He wears it to exist, to feel like a complete person in the only way available to him. Each stitched face he constructs is a desperate, monstrous attempt at being someone, anyone, other than the broken thing underneath. That flash of his real face in the remake is so brief it almost feels accidental, like the film caught something it wasn't supposed to show. And the discomfort of feeling even a flicker of pity for Leatherface in that moment is its own specific kind of horror that the genre rarely manages to pull off. 3. Scream 4, Jill Roberts the Fame Monster. Scream 4 announces itself as a meta-commentary on the modern horror landscape and then actually follows through on that promise in a way most self-aware sequels never do. Jill Roberts is introduced as the new final girl. Shy, smart, sympathetic, Sydney's younger cousin carrying the weight of a family history she didn't choose. For most of the film, she is exactly who she appears to be, the character the audience naturally roots for and quietly assumes will make it to the end. When Ghostface removes the mask and it's Jill, the shock lands hard, but the truly disturbing moment comes right after, when she's alone and methodically stages her own victimhood, cutting herself, breaking glass with her own hands, throwing herself into walls, constructing the perfect soul survivor narrative with the calm precision of someone who rehearsed it, covered in blood and wearing a small, satisfied smile. Her motive isn't revenge, isn't grief, isn't any of the things horror usually hands you. She wants the interviews, the book deal, the cameras, the status of being the new Sidney Prescott. Scream 4 was way ahead of the curve in recognizing that the hunger for fame had become its own specific kind of psychopathy, and Jill's unmasking is the moment the film stops being clever and starts being genuinely chilling. 2. Jason Voorhees, the face under the hockey mask. The 7th chapter of the Friday the 13th franchise delivered one of the most grotesque and visually striking looks at what Jason Voorhees actually is underneath the hockey mask, and it remains one of the most memorable moments of body horror in the entire saga. For the first time, Jason faces a truly worthy opponent in Tina Shepard, a young woman with telekinetic powers, and their confrontation goes well beyond the physical. It's a battle of accumulated force, and the mask itself becomes collateral damage as Tina uses her abilities to push, crush, and tear at him. When the lower portion of the mask finally snaps loose under telekinetic pressure, what emerges isn't a human face. It's a mass of rotting flesh, deformed jaw, exposed teeth, pieces of bone visible as if time and death have been slowly carving him from the inside out. It's the face of something that should not be standing, something that has been dead long enough for it to show in every possible way. And yet here he is. The reveal doesn't make Jason more sympathetic or more understandable. It makes him more impossible, which is exactly the point, and exactly why the image has stuck with audiences for nearly 40 years. 1. Scream Billy Loomis, the boyfriend who did it. There is a before and after in slasher history, and the reveal of Billy Loomis as Ghostface in the original Scream sits exactly on that dividing line. Everything that came before Scream assumed the masked killer was a stranger, an external force, an outside threat, something that invaded your world from somewhere else. Wes Craven looked at that assumption and built the entire film around dismantling it as publicly and painfully as possible. Billy is Sydney's boyfriend, the person closest to her in the world, the person she trusted most, the person the audience spent the entire film watching comfort her and protect her and mourn alongside her. When the mask comes off and it's him, and then Stu, her best friend's boyfriend, comes out grinning from the other room, the floor drops out completely. His motive is personal in the most devastating way. Sydney's mother had an affair with his father. His mother left, and he decided Sydney's entire social circle owed him something for it. The reveal didn't just shock audiences in 1996. It rewrote the rules for what a slasher villain could be, proved that the most dangerous thing in a horror movie was never the stranger at the door, and launched a franchise that's still running 30 years later on the strength of that single moment. So there you have it. 10 of the most jaw-dropping, brain-breaking unmaskings in horror history, from alternate dimension killers to the boyfriend who had the whole thing planned from the beginning. Which reveal genuinely got you? Drop it in the comments below, and if you want more deep dives into the moments that made horror what it is, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.